Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
What is happening, my friend? Welcome to the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. This is your host, Brad Wilson, the founder of EnhanceYourEdge.com. And today's guest is Swedish poker beast Anton Wigg. At just 33 years of age, Anton has managed to rack up 10.8 million in combined online and MTT cashes. Some of his highlights include a 672K EPT main event victory in Copenhagen in 2010, victories in the Sunday Millie and Sunday 500 on Stars, and recently vanquishing past Chasing Poker Greatness guest Ari Engel at the LAPC back in the good old days of February when live poker was still a thing. I very much loved my conversation with Anton as he dropped greatness bombs all over the place. He's a dude who exemplifies strength and leadership on and off the tables, a man who pushes his friends to be the best possible version of themselves, which in my opinion is what friendship is all about. And in our conversation, you're going to learn why Anton believes it's vitally important to compartmentalize his poker emotions, why being a leader in the poker space means being honest about the mistakes you make at the table, why adding more complexity to your poker game is not necessarily a good thing, and much, much more. So without any further ado, I bring to you the world-class crusher from Sweden, Anton Wigg. Anton, good morning, sir. How you doing?
Oh, well, good lunch. Good lunch to you from Barcelona.
Yeah, it's good morning. Good morning from America. You're officially locked in. You got nowhere to go except talk to me. How does it feel?
It feels great, actually. I have the feeling that I've been prepping for this for quite some time, just in terms of like being physically prepared. I do a lot of yoga. I meditate. I make sure that I can do most of my work from online. So like this is my like tryout run, you know. I get to actually like implement it, and I got to travel here from the Bay Area and like try to make sure to not, you know, if I was infected coming from an area with a lot of infections, then I could didn't want to spread it to anyone else, right? Like I'm not that worried about myself. I'm in excellent physical shape, and I'm in an age group that's not very in danger. But my main concern is spreading it to other people. So I got to really like utilize all these small skills that I've gathered up over time and make my way here in this self-quarantine. So yeah.
Even if you completely avoid like elderly people, you still can run into somebody else that doesn't, right? That's very careless. So it's like such a responsibility. Yeah.
And seeing how people move in this situation, there are a lot of people that are not very careful, which is, you know, like I get it, you know, like it's kind of like your first response to losing someone or the similar. Like people act very differently in a time of crisis, and I think that's normal. But it's I think it's really important to like for us to as people to come together and like educate people that are maybe hasn't gotten over their part of like denying that this is happening, you know, because it is happening, and that's just like the reality of it. So if I can talk to a friend that's like, whatever, you know, like, why are you being wuss? It's like staying inside, and like I don't care about this disease. I'm like, well, maybe you don't, and maybe you won't affect anyone, but say you would get it and spread it to someone else, then now you're actually like overwhelming healthcare, and all of a sudden people that should have gotten care isn't getting it. So the ripple effect of it is quite substantial, and understanding that, I think, is like the number one thing. Once you do that, it's like, oh shit, like it's not just about me.
For sure.
Yeah.
and hoping that people don't go into like cognitive dissonance and willful denial, ignorance type mode. But
I mean,
I know
some people always will. It's just a matter of for us to manage that, right? To have it at a manageable level, I should say. Yeah,
for sure. We could probably do a whole episode on coronavirus, although I don't know how much my audience would enjoy that, especially in light of the. I'm on my Twitter feed, and it's almost overwhelming. Just so many hits, just everything everybody's talking about. It's very easy to get overwhelmed.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw Matt Hunt is now taking he's only allowing himself on Twitter 3 times a day. He's like social distancing from social media while he's in self-quarantine. But
I think that's smart. I mean, I think that's the way to do most things in life. I try to limit my social media to a few interactions a day where I have my schedule. The schedule sounds so rigid, but I try to make it so that, after dinner, I have my time to reply to my messages and maybe scroll through my feed and see ooh, someone liked my picture. Oh, that feels nice. But I don't want that all the time because I know logically what that does to me. It can be overwhelming, or you can just want to get those endorphin hits all the time and you get addicted to it. So I think it's smart to either way, it doesn't have to be a crisis situation for that to be a good thing. That you check your Twitter 3-4 times a day and you have your little Twitter time, and that's fine.
We love our dopamine hits. Human beings love the dopamine hits. So I know you've been in cards a long time. Tell me the story. How'd you get involved in playing cards?
Kind of, I guess, standardized story. I don't think the story of why I got good at cards is exactly standard, but how I got started in it was playing with friends in my football team and just really enjoying the game. This is at the time of when poker was booming. Everyone was talking about it. It was on TV everywhere. So there's infinite material to watch on TV, to watch online. We played a game at a there was a few guys from my football team that played, and we played for $1-2. If it was a high stakes game, it was $5. And there was a guy running the game in his parents' house, and he was a semi-pro, so he was playing mid stakes cash at the time, and just making a lot of money. He really, really enjoyed the game, so we came there and played at his place. And I remember being upset that this guy was always beating me because he was obviously a way better player. So I started really paying attention to what he did that was good, and then also try to see how was he beating people and how was he trying to beat me. So I try to kind of like judo, you want to use someone's force to get back at them. And I started maybe not being the biggest winner in the game, but being the second biggest winner in the game. And I could sense that he was getting a little bit peeved that I was up there and competing with him. So one day I asked him, I'm I find this game completely fascinating, and if you don't mind, can I just sit and watch you play and see how you're doing this, and would you mind explaining a few things to me? So we did. That's how I got to the next level in terms of knowledge. I really understood the driving forces, the dynamics, the fundamental math, because he was a big math guy. So I just understood the fundamentals, what drives the game. And once you have that, it's way easier to be an independent learner once you know the basic fundamentals of how the game is structured and works. So,
define the basic fundamentals, because I'm assuming that they're not it's not just the structure of the game. What do the basic fundamentals mean to you?
It's a pretty broad question, but I mean, if you want to start with legs, get pre-flop right. You can't play certain hand categories from a certain positions, or you're just gonna get squashed. That's just a fundamental what's the word? A function of the game. Say you're there's almost no lineup at a 9-handed table where you can open pocket deuces under the gun, because the effect, like you're never going to get your race through enough. You're going to get called in a bunch of places. Even if you flop a set, you're like somewhat likely to get oversetted. You're actually unblocking like all of their fold, like all their automatic folds, like Jack deuce, 10 deuce, all those hands you're blocking. So like, I think deuces under the gun, 9-handed is like a good example of like, sure, you can play it and you're not going to lose like heaps doing it, but it's definitely a losing play. So that's like a basic rule that you have to follow in order to, like, if you have an open, like in this lineup, this is a profitable open, and in another lineup is not, like you have to follow the rules but also be somewhat flexible in order to exploit people that are maybe too passive or too cautious, or maybe the other way around. If people are too aggressive, then you just sit back and wait for something good to happen, because it's going to happen once you open a little bit tighter range.
So here's a question that embarrassingly took me like 16 years to ask myself. I've only asked myself this in like the last few months as a poker player.
Okay.
And let's see. I want to see your response. Fundamentally, why do poker players deploy a baseline pre-flop strategy?
Depends. Like I'd say, like my modern answer would be because solvers are now so powerful that we understand through like pre-flop solves, we do get the basic dynamics of how you want to have a somewhat fixed range in order to get as much work done. Like the, say, monk or pre-flop ranges are very dynamic in a way where you want to 3-bet hands that feels non-intuitive to 3-bet, because it clears out equity from a certain part of your opponent's grid. So once you say 3-bet queen 9 suited from the big blind, you're making him fold like the ace 9 off, like, which is like the bottom of his opening range. Like, so I find them to be very intelligent, and I find them to be it's very easy to use, and I can be quite flexible with them. Like all the hands that are a mix, I might shift into a full 3-bet because I'm incentivized to do so, because my opponent, I think, is like overfolded 3-bets or whatever, right? So I don't know if that answers your questions. I went on a little tantrum, but like that, I like these things in that way, because it's like a pretty solid knowledge, and it's easy to work from and with.
It's like it's just such an automatic thing in poker that, like, why does Doyle, why does Dan Harrington back in the day in his books give pre-flop strategy? Like, why is this a thing, right? Why do I say, oh, I have aces, I'm raising under the gun, just snap judgment? And so for me, the logical conclusion that I came to was that baseline preflop strategy is designed to be plus EV against a random assortment of opponents. So you sit in any game, you have your preflop strategy, and you believe that it's going to be winning against any assortment of opponents, right? And like you said, the adjustments based on the opponents are what comes next. Who are the players that I'm playing against, and how do I change my baseline strategy to move towards exploitation? And I think that this is something that a lot of poker players miss early on in their career. They think that, oh, I was told to do this, so I'm going to do this. And the logic then goes to, so then this is profitable, period. And anybody that does something different is making a bad decision.
Is an idiot,
Is an idiot, right? And you can see how, like, insidious this just concrete belief in one strategy can become. You get the blinders on, and then you totally discount when somebody does something that just seems absolutely crazy to you, that you can't even imagine. But what you don't understand is that they're operating, if assuming that they're a crusher or playing at a high level, they're operating at a much higher level than you are. So then the goal is to become like you and your friend. It's to watch what this person's doing and ask, how are they coming to this conclusion? Like, if a great player comes to a conclusion that's dramatically different than you, this is the first question I always ask myself is, what did they know? Like, what was their thought process?
Well, and I think you can take that even further, and you can ask that question about other people that like that are still winning players in their own rights, that are making plays that you also find very strange, and somehow, like, sometimes it might just be straight up bad, which is fine.
Sure,
but I don't think you
expand on that too. By the way, before you move on, when you say it might be straight up bad and that's okay, expand on why it's okay for it to be straight up bad.
Well, I mean, like, it's for them, they're not playing the same like strategy that I would deploy, right? But they're still winning players in a live environment, and the things that are straight up bad might just be stuff that, I mean, like, they could definitely work on this. Like, the stuff that is bad is mixed in with a lot of other things that are good and aggressive and that really works in a live environment. Maybe probably definitely wouldn't work in like a high stakes online environment, the things that they're doing, because people pay more attention and people are more geared towards maybe exploiting this type of playing style. But like, when you're playing a pretty fast, loose and aggressive style, people live get uncomfortable, or some people get scared, and scared people make pretty bad decisions. Is my general understanding. So like, sure, some of the hands that they play, I'm like, okay, I see what you were trying to do there, but like, I don't think that's gonna end up netting you profit in the long run. And then I look at other plays that they do, and I'm like, I don't think I could have like gotten away with that, but you get away with it because of like ABC hands you played in the past. Like, people are literally like scared to put money in the pot against you. So you're, on the other hand, making a profit just by having shown that you're fearless. Like you get that effect of, and that's the effect that you get in a live environment. Like, I have some players that I'm like, I know that I'm technically stronger than these players are, but they just get so much shit for free that I'm like, I think their expectancy in a live environment is higher. And so I try to learn and try to strive for like, okay, how can I emulate the things that I think they're doing really well, and how can I bring, also just like psychologically bring that presence to the table that they're exuding, that they just have. It's like aura of not giving a fuck, or like, if you're gonna come after me, I'm gonna like slay you.
It's interesting that a player with a fearless reputation creates risk aversion just by the nature of them being themselves. And you're absolutely right that like sometimes plays get set up by past plays, and you can make a negative EV play at some point. Like, I mean, I typically play cash games, and I see this all the time where I make a negative EV play and I'm like, ugh, like I don't like the way I did that, but it's like a 30 big blind pot. And then 10 minutes later, there's a situation that develops where I can exploit that mistake that I just made in the eyes of somebody else for like a 200 big blind pot. And it's almost like it just sets itself up naturally.
Yeah, it's like a positive kind of compounding effect, I guess, from your previous mistake.
Right.
Whereas like, if you do pre-flop mistakes, then that generally compounds later in the hand to like terrible disaster and your house burning around you.
Right. Typically the mistake is like an over-aggression thing where a hand shows down and you have something that's like absolutely ridiculous and you turn it over, and then you pick up some sort of value hand 10 minutes later, and you just know that like image and credibility are ruined and you're likely to get paid super wide.
So let me ask you a question. Like, what's your default? Say you make a mistake in a hand, whether it be a misclick or just like you didn't like the open you did or whatever. Like you find yourself having made a mistake one way or another. Like, what's your default? Do you try to like aggressively play your way out of that situation? Like, okay, then I'm just gonna see that every flop, or do you err the other way and like, okay, like I made a mistake, but I'm not going to like build on it, kind of thing?
Like when the hand is in progress?
Yeah, I mean, like you find yourself there and you're like, oh shit, that was a mistake. Like, what do I do now?
I'm going to be try to use what I have in the moment. So like typically what happens, I found over my cash career, is that if I make a mistake, I get in a situation and I try to battle my way out of it, it just compounds and I end up losing a shitload more than I would have had I just pumped the brakes. So I think my default is to pump the brakes. However, if there's information that says, maybe I can exploit this guy with some bet sizings, maybe I can exploit this guy because they're overfolding on certain board formations and stuff like that, then I'll still kind of go ham. But by default, but again, like, it's hard to trust myself. I say that these things compound and I make tons of mistakes, but this could be negativity bias, right? I can't go back and actually see the results of these hands.
You can run a solve and you can put the 8-4 offsuit in there as like your under gun open.
Yeah, I don't think I need to run a solver on that one. I'm pretty confident on the 8-4 off UTG. But
yeah, exactly. No, but I meant like once the big blind calls, you're like, all right, well, now we're here.
Yeah, now
I'm still gonna see about the flop, but like I might just be done with it, meeting resistance. It's just one of those things that I don't know if I'm biased in it, but most of the times, more times than others, when I've tried to like just build on a mistake, it really compounds. And I think that's a really good lesson. It took me a very long time to learn, to get over my ego and just be like, okay, whatever, like I made a mistake, next, and I think it's one of the most crucial skills to have in poker, to be humble enough to be honest with having made a mistake. Like if I pumped at a tournament, I'm not gonna like make it a better story for my swaps. I'm gonna go to them and say like, yeah, I fucked up. I played this hand like shit. I'm sorry, And they're like, that's okay. It happens to me too. And it's almost like you can sense like a sense of relief from them when you're honest with that, because they're like, oh, that's so nice and refreshing. Like he's not beating himself up, but he's also just like admitting that he made a mistake, and then that's probably not going to happen again. But once you start building that kind of dissonance, I guess, towards your mistake and like try to build something over that, then that's a really dangerous path to go down as a poker player, I think. So, and it took me a long time to learn to like really be more humble about that.
It's very limiting to build that dissonance on a mistake and try to justify it in some way. And it is cathartic when people, I would assume you're not swapping with like Rex, right? You're one of the great tournament players that are traveling around and playing the game. So you're obviously swapping with great players. And
yeah, I'm actually like good luck Chuck. Like every time I swap with people, they end up winning. So I'm up infinite on swaps.
It's nice. That's an okay superpower to have.
It is. It's great. It's great. It works out for everyone, for sure.
This is the biggest tell for me that somebody's going to struggle in poker, that they're going to have lots of issues when their degree of certainty on all of their decisions is like 80% plus. This is when I realize like this person doesn't get it. Like they don't see that. Like I try to play 1,000 hands of cash a day, and this has been pretty much my system forever. And every day I'm making decisions that I'm like 20% certain on. And I don't, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, and I just do it and then I move on. And like when you said, what do I do? Like when I find myself making a mistake, like post hand, I just move on. I don't even think about it. Like I don't latch on. I don't berate myself anymore. Like when I do a database review, I'll go through it now because here's another interesting thing that I found. Sometimes say I lose 2 buy-ins and then I do something absurd and lose a 3rd buy-in. And I'm like super annoyed with myself. And I'm like, what were you thinking? Like that was so dumb. What were you doing? And then like 2 weeks later, I'll look back at my database and I'll review the hand with a clear mind. And I'll think, that wasn't as ridiculous as you thought it was.
Yeah.
It just seemed more ridiculous because you were stuck at the time and you were emotional.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just admit to yourself that you have a low degree of certainty in some spots. And if they're pivotal and they come up all the time, this is a great place to dive in deep, right? And do some studying to shore up that aspect of your game.
Yeah, exactly. And like if I ever, work with, I don't coach for profit. but I coach friends sometimes, and like have people that I would like see do well, or have horses that I talk to. And the first thing I do is just like, let's just run a VPIP filter. Like, let's just run every single hand that you VPIP from pre-flop and see, are there any like overarching leaks in your game? Like, I think most accomplished poker players still have fundamental like mindset leaks, whether it be, I think tournament players generally are like too risk adverse when it gets late into a tournament, which is like there's a little bit of an effect of like ICM actually being in place, so you should stack off, like slightly tighter, and like there's some incentive to be slightly more passive. But I think a lot of people are like they see the final table there, and I think this is like one of the biggest takeaways in MTTs, that like this is the time to kind of be more aggressive, because your BB100 just skyrockets because people are just overfolding on every single note, right? So doing these reviews with people, it's everyone has different leaks, but it usually stems down to some type of insecurity and some type of mindset issue that doesn't really have much to do with poker. It has much more to do with who they are as a person. And then starting from that point, you can really like say, okay, like you're playing too passive. Next time you're in this situation, like just, I can't remember what video it was, but someone said it's like, next time you're in this situation, just like, don't punt, but like really fucking go for it. Like just turn the heat up, and like don't let yourself leave with that feeling of being run over or being like too passive. And then you do that in like maybe a lower stakes environment until you've kind of gotten over this negative feeling towards yourself mainly. And I've seen like really quick increases in people's game because they regain that confidence. And like this is, I think, has to do with like, you see people going on these insane runs all the time in tournament poker, especially cash game poker as well. But in tournaments, it's so noticeable. Whereas like you can just tell they're in the zone. They're like making all the right moves. Everything is working out. And I think there's so much to be learned from that, to like gear your process towards being in that flow state and tapping into whatever it was that you saw. Like maybe the play in itself is technically wrong, but you saw something that you made you feel like this is going to work. You trusted your gut, and you have the results to back it up. Like I mean, it happens too many times for it to be a coincidence.
What can you attribute it to, as far as witnessing guys in this flow state when they're just crushing everyone?
I think I mean, like I can only speak for myself, but like when I am in that flow state, I just trust my instincts. Like a fold that I could have talked myself into not making because it's technically wrong, it's like a snap fold in that state of mind. You're so sure, you're like 100% sure that the jacks are just like, you don't even think twice about it, like they're straight into the muck. And I think that's
can
like,
you quantify this though? Like,
yeah, I can actually. Like, I think just, I mean, I played this game for 11 years, and all that knowledge that I've like summed up is in a flow state, much more accessible to me. Like in that state, I'm much more confident in my reads. I'm much more confident in executing the things that I know is right from 11 years of experience, and also like countless hours of studies, countless hours of play in different environments, and just like observing people in a live environment as well. Like you notice those little things that when I sit at a live table and I think, oh, I hope nobody saw that, like I hope nobody saw that little glimmer in my eye when I looked at my cards, or I hope that nobody saw that like when I made that C bet, I really didn't feel strong, and I think that when people are in that state, they're just like, gotcha,
They never let myself. You're never let off the hook, right?
when I'm in that state, I feel the same. I'm like, gotcha. This guy just looks over at me and like he looks super confident, but I look into his eyes and I'm like, oh, okay, like I call, and you can sense that they feel that they got.
Where do you think that comes from? Like this gut, this intuition, like spider sense type of deal. Experience, like countless simulations of similar situations leads up to a vast like database of knowledge basically that you pull from. It's interesting that poker players can't tap into this flow state all the time. What do you think prevents people from tapping into the flow state?
I think you can actually. I think some people are better at it, or have like a higher success rate. Like the people that are taking it very seriously. You see someone like C. Justin is like constantly working on his game. He is meditating. He's like meditating at the table. You see him having his little beam things that he's sitting with. And it's just like, it seems like it's always a process. And then, of course, you play against him on different days where maybe he's not as focused or like the stakes are lower. So he's not taking it as seriously or whatever. But say someone like Stephen Chidwick, for instance, like it seems like he's always on his A game. Like it seems like he's always very, very present. He's always ready to kill everyone and everyone. He's always ready to make a play if he feels like it's right. He's just very tapped into. So I definitely think like with practice, you can really elevate yourself to that level if that's your desired outcome. Like I'm not from the camp of like I don't want my life to be so much about perfection. I want to have like a very high level of accuracy, and I want to tap into this in a more relaxed way for me at least. So I try to do things that like I try to gear my process towards being something that works for me in my day-to-day life without putting that strain of like I want to be the best in the world, because that's not my ambition currently. I want to be very, very good, but I'm not willing to. I know for myself that I'm not willing to make the sacrifices that are necessary in order to be the best.
It's an unbalanced strategy. I think going for being the best in the world is unbalanced. In that, a friend of mine was telling me that somebody asked him. He's an Olympian. Somebody asked him like, "How do I become an Olympic gold medalist while being a good father?" And the answer was, you don't. you choose, right? You can either be a gold medal Olympic winner and a shitty father, or you can be a pretty good father and a shitty Olympian. Like there's no in between. Or you find a partner that really complements you, that is willing to support you through that struggle that it is to become to achieve that level of greatness. Like you can still have a very balanced family situation. It just takes a lot from your partner, because your partner has to in that instance fill a lot of the voids that you're not willing to do, because your mind is preoccupied by like scaling the biggest mountain in the world or whatever, whatever which makes you not present with your kids, right? Like you just you miss out on tons of time, right? You just don't have the time to invest to be there, to be a great father. I think it's tough maintaining that balance, and I really think that your way aligns more with my way in life, as far as not aspiring to be the greatest poker player in the world, not aspiring to be the highest stakes nosebleed player, but looking for fulfillment and balance in our life. That this is what makes me happy as a human being. And I'm not saying that that's for everybody, right? Maybe there are some people that need that motivation to play the super high rollers, to play super high stakes nosebleed. And that gives them fulfillment and happiness. And for them, go for it. That's their path.
Yeah. And I think there's also a point to be made for, longevity in the game. Say work super hard for 2-3 years, and like you achieve the goals, that like you get to the level of playing super high, but during that time you burn yourself out, and you really burn the candle at both ends, and you get to the middle of it, and now you might be depressed, you might be burnt out, you might not even be able to work for 5 years. Like, we see this in all different paths of life, and sometimes it's like surprising, like these people, you thought they were way more balanced, but they just been pushing themselves so hard that just because they were doing things very well, it looks like they're successful. Whereas someone else that is doing this process over like a 5-6 year time span, which is probably more realistic to achieve. I always, when I make plans, I always think, okay, this thing will be done in a year, and then 2 years later, I'm like, oh shit, like every single time. It's always like that. It takes like roughly 2 times the time that I have as a time frame in my mind. And I could realistically achieve it in 1 year, but I don't know how that would affect me. I think it would affect me negatively in the long run. I would be a way more stressed person and have a less balanced lifestyle, basically.
Goals always take longer to achieve than we think when we're goal setting for ourselves. I think that's one of the major reasons why like New Year's resolutions have such a high fail rate is because people are not used to setting goals, and then all of a sudden they go absolutely crazy, and it's not sustainable. They're not able to do it. I did speak
I have a sorry, before you continue on that, I have a little bit of a different theory about especially New Year's resolutions. I think one of the things that makes people fail the most is their fear of succeeding. So like, you set your goal to go to the gym and run and be fit, right? But then you start doing this and you feel, oh, this actually makes me feel really good. I should always do this. Then now you have a new you have a new level of expectations of yourself. And when you fail, which we all do all the time, like we always get to a point where, I hurt my leg, or this weekend I just want to be a couch potato and go back to eating chips. Then you make like your brain is so disappointed in itself, and you as a entity is so disappointed in like that you didn't do this. Instead of just being like, okay, maybe I can take a weekend and you sit on the couch and eat chips, and then I'll get back to the gym on Monday and it's fine. Like nothing has happened. But instead, the brain says, don't do that again, because you're going to hurt yourself. So it says, why try in the first place, right? I think that's a very common thing. So like people start and they do that first week, and the gym is always full after New Year. And then everyone is like disappoints themselves when they get back to the couch, and then they never show up again, which is the opposite of what you should be doing. You should just be like, it's okay that I take a weekend of rest. Like I've been pushing myself really hard. I've lost a bunch of weight. I feel good about it. You know what? I can have 2 bags of chips and like be a swine for a day, and take the next day off. And I can still like show up at the gym on Monday, and it's fine. 1 step back, 2 steps forward kind of mentality.
Yeah, it's everything in life is mindset, right? Like just all the things that we want to achieve, like our brains are constantly lying to us. And I think trying to get tapped into our brain, I realized this while I'm at the gym. It's like I'm halfway through my workout, I'm like 30 minutes in, and my brain's telling me, all right, you can take off. Like you did enough. You're tired, maybe you can't make it through. And like, it's every single time. And like, after, the 100th time, one time I just realized, like, why the fuck is my brain lying to me? Like, why is this happening over and over? Why before I go to the gym is my brain saying, you can take the day off. It's no big deal, right? Man, you don't feel like it. You didn't sleep well. But I get to the gym, like my body's ready. My body feels good, but my mind is just such a liar.
That's really funny, because for me it's the exact opposite.
Really?
Like for me, my first half hour is like, you can take on, like, fuck this shit. You don't need this shit. And then after half an hour, there's always this moment where I kind of like, I just wake up and I feel so connected. And then it's usually like right around halfway through my workout where I'm like, everything is turned on instead. And I'm like, I don't want to leave. Like I could do, I'm supposed to be there for another half hour. And I'm like, I don't want to get out of here. Like I'd rather I want to do like an hour extra because I feel so great in that moment. So it's funny that we work, I think, like polar opposite in terms of that. Like I'm a slow starter and you're started from the get-go, and then you're like, oh, okay, now you want to wind down.
Yeah, maybe it's who knows the reasons why. I will say that like whatever I do, like with poker, I've always been not a volume player but a high intensity player. So like, you know, for me it's like everything's a sprint. Even in sports, like it's quick twitch, not endurance and super long distance, but it's like, you know, I have no idea. But it's
have you tried at the end of your workout to do something I learned from yoga is to always like integrate your workout. So lie down and just like let all the movement that you've done for the past hour, both physically and mentally, let that kind of like seep in. Like just let that code right over like what was previously done.
No, I haven't actually.
It's called Shalavasana in yoga, and it's incredibly beneficial. It's a very big hack. You take 1 or 2 minutes, just lie down, relax, and let the work that you've done integrate, and you're gonna find some pretty amazing results from that.
Is there like a mental visualization? Is it meditative?
You can work with different kind of like strategizing around it. You don't have to, like, basically you can just lie down and like feel work that has happened in your body and feel like all the movements that you've done, and that way you kind of like, it's like software writing for the next time you're going to make the same movement, right? So like all those things that you did, and like something felt good and something felt not so good, and this one you were aligned and this one you're not, like now you actually have time to think about that and like let it integrate and see how does that feel in my body and where am I a little bit imbalanced, and then you're ready to also, you relax your muscles and you're ready to like continue facing your day. Instead of still being in that little like stress, you know, like you come out of the gym and you're like a little bit jacked and everything is a little bit like off. Now you're instead more inwardly centered, and it only takes a couple of minutes to achieve it. So
I love that. I can say that laying on the ground at the end of my workout, that's an easy work in for me. Just laying down, resting. But I'm all about the meditation aspect of it and gaining awareness as to what's going on in your body and how you feel. And as poker players, understanding your emotions, understanding your awareness is probably most of the battle as a poker player. Like most people focus on the technical aspect of the game. And I would say that they could totally minimize the emotional aspect of the game in such a way that it's very detrimental to them just overall. And one thing, I'm taking us off track here. I do have some other questions, but one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm going to bring a friend on to talk about physiologically what's happening. But I found that in my poker career, again, this is the first time I've put words to this publicly. It flies in the face of everything that I've been taught in poker, and it might I might lose some audience members and get just roasted on social media over this. But the other day, I just said I was a high intensity player, right? Typically, my cash sessions are a few hours and then break, rejuvenation, a few hours, break, rejuvenation, hopefully a few more hours is a typical day for me. When I get stuck, say 4 buy-ins, I can go longer. I have more energy. My level of focus rises. I have more energy in my being, and forever I've looked at that as a negative thing, as when you're stuck, when you're losing, you don't want to press, you just quit your poker session. This is the conventional wisdom, right? And over time, gaining awareness of this happening and seeing it happen in so many other people, like just it's such a human response to this situation. I've come to the conclusion that I look forward to that. I look forward to this state of more energy and more focus when I'm stuck. That's going to allow me to put in more volume. Like I'm finding gratitude for this feeling, whereas most people are angry with themselves or it causes them to go on tilt or whatever it is. And I'd like to know your thoughts about this kind of phenomenon as well that I've observed, but have only just really realized what's happening?
Well, I think you're making just based on what you told me, I think you're making a smart adjustment. Like, it's the same thing as going back to, like the pre-flop chart stuff we were talking about. Like, it doesn't, as long as your analyze of the situation is in line with the reality of the situation, then like positive or negative, that's just attributes that we make to something. But if this like enables you to have more energy, play better, I think it's actually like is a really great quality to have, right? Like you find, like, I think it's also makes you if you actually play better and you have more energy, then you're going to have way less variance in the long run, because every time you're losing, you're kind of like making some of that back by putting in quality volume. So
I don't know if it's better, but I don't know that it's worse. Like I think it's like it's pretty even across the board.
Yeah, but I mean, like then it's at least not a negative. It doesn't have a negative what's the word for it, connotation, right? Like, it's not attached to the negativity that would, I guess, generally be attributed to it. Because why people have this like negative connotation to it is because they do that when they're tilted, or they do that when they do play bad, right?
Or they do it when they think they're going to be tilted, right? Maybe not. They're not even tilted. Maybe they're just angry, or they're emotional, and they're afraid that it's going to manifest in their play. Whether it does or whether it doesn't is anybody's guess. Again, going back to awareness of, you do something that is just like objectively horrible, then obviously you can call it a day. But otherwise, at least for me, it's like, but like, this is not something that I've stumbled across. This is many examples of me doing this over my career, 1,000 times, where I play longer when I'm stuck, and witnessing it in other people, and looking at like the conventional, I guess, sort of totally logical with no emotion idea of just quit when you're stuck, kind of turns it on its head, at least for me. And I think for like seasoned professionals who have been through the emotions and have been through this countless times, it's way more beneficial. Like, if you're a recreational player or relatively new to the game, don't take what I'm saying right now to heart. Like, you need to don't play for 48 hours when you're stuck.
You know what? I've seen guys at live tables, like recreationals, and they lose a hand and they just get up and leave the table. And I'm like, you know what? Like, that's the best thing you could have done right now. Like, for you in the state of mind, like, if you're a professional player, of course, like, don't leave. Like, you're gonna get another hand for free and you want to play it, right? But you're seeing how upset they get by like losing that big hand or like whatever it is. I'm like, that's the most plus EV play you could make right now, is leave the table, take a walk, drink a glass of water, or whatever you need to do, and then come back, right? So anyways, what like to get back to your initial question, I think it's very subjective. It's very subjective to the situation you're in. Like, for me at this point, I'm pretty detached from, like, my immediate results. Playing MTTs for 11 years is like, it really fucking hardens you. Like, it takes a long time because I'm very competitive. It took me a long time to like get to where I am, and it took a lot of work to get to where I am. But the only time when I'm like actually like tilted, when you feel that like your heart rate goes up, you're like, you can feel the blood under your skin. It's when I make like a big error. I'm like, this was like really, really a bad play, and I wouldn't think I would make it after 11 years. But you know what? Like, we all make them, and it's gonna happen. I just try to minimize that, and I really try to. That's the only time I beat myself up, because I know how terrible it makes me feel, and I really want to kind of like that's my outlet when I'm like actually pissed. Like, one time I had two of my friends staying with me. They're not poker players, right? So I was at EPT Barcelona. I 3-bet sixes against some short stack to get it in, like somewhat deep. I mean, this whole tournament I've been short. short. Just grinding, playing the short stack so fucking well. I get like two double ups, and it's that feeling of like you go for a hike, you get up the mountain, and then you start walking down, and you see like the creek, and you're just like, oh shit, now I'm home safe, you know. You start like running, and you break your leg or something. Or last ski run of the day, like you go for a jump, you know. That's always when you break your knee or something. So I had the same feeling. 3-bet sixes against some guy to get it in, super fine. The big blind recreational guy that I know, and he's like has it here. He 4-bets, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna put it in, and like my hand puts the chips in, and like he's like, oh my god, this sucks so much. Like, calls off with jacks. And I used like, I mean, like ever since the chips went over the line, I'm just praying that like, I'm like, this is so bad. This is so horrendously bad. And I'm like praying like, please have ace king, you know, like please just buy me a fake flip, or like maybe make a really bad 2-tight fold. But like, it's not going to happen. Right. So if I never felt that I wouldn't hit a 2-out or more than I did this time. I was like, okay, you guys folded the other 2 6s, right? Like I'm just out of there. I get up to my room, and my non-poker playing friends are there. They see me as kind of like an even keel guy, like, you know, like I'm never super upset about stuff, or like really angry. And I just come up and I start kicking like the little like sofa bed that's on the side. I just like kick it until there's like pillows flying all over the room. And they just look at me like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, and what the fuck happened to the person we know, you know? And then I'm like, okay, now I'm fine, you know? And that to me was really, I don't know, it's a very therapeutic moment to be like, these are the times when I actually get to have that like emotional outlet for these situations, because I don't want to do it again. I recognize my mistake, but also like, it's nice to, you know, don't be a robot. You want to be emotional in life. In poker, you want to be more even keel, but I don't want to confuse that with my normal life, because in my normal life, I don't want to be more actively engaged with my emotions and in my relationships. And yeah,
for sure. There's a thing that animals do, like when a rabbit gets chased by another animal and it gets away, they lay on the ground and they shake. It's like an adrenaline release of the moment. Obviously a very traumatizing thing, right? You're getting chased to get eaten. Like a human being can't even imagine such a thing happening, but this is like normal for the rabbit, right?
Yeah.
It gets away and it lays on the ground and it shakes, and it's like, it's a release. It's therapeutic for the animal. And I think that in the same way, like you're just releasing emotion, and it's therapy, right? You're releasing adrenaline. You knew, obviously, from just the way that you tell the hand is like, when your hand is out there, you're hoping for a flip, because you know what you did was just so bad that they let you out of jail by just giving you a flip, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, again, like this is poker. Going back to that. So imagine this happens online, to what I was saying, right? You make this mistake, you get it in with sixes, you know it's bad. The remaining MTTs that you have up, are you more focused or less focused?
Well, I mean, like when I'm playing a session, I just don't allow myself to, you know, like I can just recognize the mistake, but I'm still super.
It's not going to affect you like that.
It can't affect me like that, because then that would spill, like it would just take away my focus on like the next hand. So I really try to just be in flow, and like of course there will be mistakes happening, but there are very few and far in between where there's like a major one. And even if it is a major one, it's just like, yeah, I can't really change the fact that those chips are in the pot and probably not mine anymore.
It's interesting.
So
Why do you think it's different between live and online? Like, why is there this different reaction?
Well, the thing live is like, well, the times when I actually like let myself feel this way, and just like storm out of the tournament room and up to my room and kick these pillows, is because I no longer have to be there and focus. Like, say a couple of years back, there's probably a few times where I've done this and still had chips, and I probably should have done like the recreational and just like left the table for 3 more hands or something, went to get a coffee and just like take a breather, you know. Nowadays I've worked on my mental game a fair bit, and I'm just resilient enough to like still sit there with a straight face, and maybe someone thinks I'm a psychopath and like will call off with a hand that has no business calling off later. But once I make a major mistake like that and I'm out, then I just have the freedom to act on my anger with myself, you know. And I think that's a healthy response to do that. But if meditation teaches you anything, it's just to kind of see reality for what it is and make decisions based on it, and maybe not, you know, act on your emotions even though you have them. To have more distance to what your brain is telling you it wants you to do. Instead, I can master my brain and say, well, I maybe I'll be pissed later, but right now I'm just going to continue to focus on task in hand.
Yeah, when I'm online, it's like I get this number when I do something dumb. I just make that face, like,
I know that face. Yeah,
that wasn't good. But then, like, you can't dwell on it because, again, you're already dealt in at 3 other tables. But it's like,
exactly,
this is going to be embarrassing later in hand review. Okay, now let's move on.
Well, yeah, but I like that. You know, if I'm showing one of if I show hands to my horse and I make a mistake, I'm like, oh, that was really fucking bad. And it's like you look at the hand, and if there's anything to learn, you learn from it. But I think it's so nice for other people. Like if you can admit your mistakes, it just opens up a whole new space for people to be comfortable with you.
I don't think you can be successful at poker if you can't admit your mistakes. I think that's almost a prerequisite to achieving greatness in poker, is being able. Well,
maybe, or you're just a really big asshole, but like and like pretty decent at poker because you just want to like you still want to be the best, right? But it's a pretty big asshole thing to never admit your mistakes.
It almost seems like there's no feedback loop for improvement if you're assuming you're not making mistakes. And you're always making mistakes as poker players.
I can use, like, off the top of my head, there's like a few names that, like, when we have this conversation, they just bubble to the top of my head. And I'm like, yeah, they're pretty successful poker players, but they're also like really big assholes. And I'm pretty sure they never admitted a mistake in their life, you know. Not going to mention any names, but yeah.
I'm not even going to investigate any further because offending potentially the guests that have already come on or the guests that might come on in the future. Yo, Coach Brad here, and I have a very simple question. How would you like an opportunity to join Nick Howard's crew at Poker Detox? This is a chance for you to have world-class coaching and hop on the fast track to destroying online cash and MTTs without risking your own money or enduring years of pain trying to figure things out on your own. I recently had the good fortune to go behind the scenes with Nick and his Detox crew to experience for myself their training methods, and quite frankly, I was blown away and have never seen anything like it. The Poker Detox system is both powerful enough to supercharge your game and simple enough to implement hand after hand. In the last year, they have verifiably fast-tracked multiple players from 50 no limit all the way up through 1K no limit, and on average, their players are winning 8 big blinds per 100 on non-app sites across all stakes, with the majority of volume being played at 200 through 500 no limit. However, this opportunity is not for wannabes or lazy bums. This is for folks who are obsessed and want to do the work so that they can reach their full potential as poker players. To qualify, you must be able to provide a break-even or winning graph in cash games or MTTs over the last 3 to 6 months and be willing to play full-time. To take the next step, all you have to do is send me that graph via email, brad@enhanceyouredge.com, or send a direct message to @enhanceyouredge on Twitter, and I'll personally guide you through the next step in the process. Once again, that email is brad@enhanceyouredge.com, and the Twitter handle is @enhanceyouredge. Thank you for your time. I'd love to hear from you soon. And now, back to the show. I was interviewed on another podcast, the Rec Poker podcast, and they asked me about a tournament hand. I don't even really play tournaments. And basically there's two famous poker players involved, and they were asking me my thoughts and the breakdown. And basically at the end of it, I'll just say the hand because it's easier this way.
Sure.
It's harder.
Shoot,
it's more tangible. So
I mean, I'm a poker player. I love hand histories. Let's go.
I'm guessing the audience does too. You're actually a tournament player as well. I can't remember the details, but say there's 35 bigs. UTG opens to 2.2.
You know how deep they are in the tournament? Like, do you know which stage of the tournament they're in?
There's like 80 people left in the main event.
Oh dear. Okay. Yeah.
So it's pretty big.
So it matters. Yeah.
It matters. Yeah. It's not an irrelevant spot. UTG +1 opens 2.2x. Everybody folds to us in the cut, and we have Ace of Hearts, King X. UTG's a well-known, respected tournament player. What are your thoughts entering this situation? What are your likely actions?
Thoughts are probably like, depending on like if it is a main event, I'm going to be a little bit mindful of like what the table looks like in my position at the table. If I have a really, really, really good spot at the table, like I'm probably leaning towards mixing in a lot more flats than I generally would, because like XYZ reasons. Just basically like I make more money in other spots than I do here, even though it's clearly like a profitable 3-bet. It's also a profitable flat. It's just like, don't fold your hand, you know?
Yeah, don't fold. Folding is out of the equation.
And like, there's also maybe a bunch of other good stuff that could happen. Say there is a bunch of guys behind you with somewhere between 15 and 20 bigs. Now they can get it in with like a bunch of hands that would fold out normally. There are a lot of good things that can happen from flatting. So like,
you can do squeezes.
Yeah, exactly. My initial thing would probably be to be more flat heavy and still play like a somewhat high 3-bet. But it's like, he's not the spot, right? Like, he's a well-respected player, opens a solid range on the gun or on the gun one. It's like, it's not the most thrilling thing to get an ace king and this dynamic, even though it's like fairly profitable with 35 bigs. So
I agree.
That would be my like base coming in, and if I 3-bet and he puts it in, then yeah, okay, fuck, like, let's go. Maybe I have a lot of chips in the main, but I would be more risk adverse than I generally would. And especially like, say I play the millions 10K in Barca, I'd be like, let's 3-bet get this in because there is no spots in this tournament, you know.
Exactly. And this was my thoughts too. Like, what's the configuration of the table? Who are the opponents? Do I have better spots where I can basically just pick on people and have super high expectation moving forward? Why am I going to pick on this UTG +1 player who's world class? Just go out of my way to get in a spot with him when I can, obviously play against the other guys. So that was my first question. I said my default would probably be to 3-bet. Although I don't know. Like I said, I don't play a ton of tournaments, so this is a little out of my realm. Like cash game, it's always going to be 3-bet. 3-bet's always the option because it's plus EV. But tournaments, you have a lot more considerations.
It might be that might be higher expectation, like way higher, and depending on the dynamic of the table and future expectations. So yeah.
So opponent does 3-bet. They 3-bet like really small, like maybe 5.5x. Or something like so 2.2 5.5. Everybody folds and UTG +1 flats. We get a king 10 deuce flop with the 10 deuce of hearts. Check, and now your action.
Do we have heart in our hand?
We have the ace of hearts. Yes,
ace of hearts. Okay, yeah. I mean, like we used to have an auto. Like I would used to always see bet this board. It's just too good for imposition. It's really hard to defend. I would just see bet to a very small size and let them deal with it. Basically, it's like
what is UTG +1's defense range here? I guess this is another operative question.
I mean, to smaller 3-bet, I think he's a little bit wider than normal. So he has a lot more 10x, which is good for us. Those are like mainly like, he also has, I don't think he's ever folding like king jack suited. So like, especially a little bit more elastic with the 10x, which might be a good thing, or that is a good thing for us in the spot. And just like, but I don't think for the same reasons, I think he's like not super wide because I think he gets a spot as well. Like we're another reg, and we're like, he's not going to try to like over defend against us out of positions. Like I think he sees his value as well. So
right. Maybe to our size, to our size, he's going to defend frequently. Maybe I personally misranged the UTG +1. To me, I didn't think they would be defending like king jack suited or like queen 10 suited.
I think any good MTT like kind of realizes that once you get a size down, you just have to expand to these hands. Like I see these spots are the ones where I feel like, okay, queen 10 suited is starting to look a bit more iffy, but like a hand is as strong as king jack. You just have to make such a clear assumption that the imposition is like super nutted for it not to be insanely profitable defense. So I think most people like acknowledge this and make sure to have a defense that's just strong enough to not like make every bluff that imposition makes to this size, like if he has ace-5 suited or whatever, like insanely profitable. Right?
And again, going back, we have no information, right? Like we have these guys have been playing with each other for days, so that they're going to have a much better clue as to the 3-bet range against each other, and then the defense range based on the size downs and all of this thing. So we're working on limited information.
Sure.
So anyway, so villain flats, the villain c-bets small. I can't remember, 20%, whatever. UTG +1 flats, and now there's like 0.8 SPR, turns like a jack of diamonds, and UTG checks.
Yeah, that's just like the classic situation, right? Like kind of shoving can't, like, because you have like now you have your opponent's range is very split into two categories of hands. Like one category that drastically improved, and another category that is that you just got a lot higher EV. Like all of the one pair hands are now like one pair and open-ended type stuff, or like at least one pair and a gutter, right? So it's like one part of your ace king wants to really extract value from the one pair plus gutter plus type region, and the other one really doesn't want to smack it into ace queen. I find it to be one of the like kind of toughest spots to play against poker, and I would approach it in a way where against an elite opponent I would probably just like try to lean more towards the solver solution. Against someone weaker, I would really try my best I would probably always check it back and like hope that I get some type of information, like really pay attention and see if this guy shoves or puts in a bet, like how do I feel his level of confidence is? Does he really feel like nutted? Then maybe I can find a hero fold. If I really feel like I'm not sure, I'm probably leaning towards bluff catching. And if I get some information, then that's great, right? But and against like someone that I find to be more elite, that probably is a bit more elastic both pre-flop and with his little bit more like defending a little bit more on the flop. Like now you can probably put it in to just deny equity and then like put his king queen in a really tough spot, stuff like that. Because I mean, like if it's against a player like that, then I'm also gonna be a little bit more crafty. I'm gonna have a little bit few more bluffs and like want to put in my ace-5 of hearts and that like flop the flush draw. I'm just gonna like, he recognizes the situation and I want to make his bluff catchers really indifferent. So if he has like king queen, now he's really in the shits, right?
Ace-5 of hearts I can certainly get behind ripping. I think
Ace-5
of hearts feels way better than ace king with the ace of hearts.
Yeah, totally. I'm saying from like if you're chasing someone that will make good decisions, and you want to stay closer to base, basically. And if you're up against someone that you feel like you can gather more information from, or that will somehow make a mistake bet sizing, etc. I don't know, like watching Ben Salsky plays MTTs. It's always like, I'm just going to check back here and see what he does. Like that's his strategy all the time. And I'm like, it's very smart, because he's like he knows what these bet sizings means. He's looking for timing tells and stuff like that, and he can gather more information that way. So that's just like his intelligent way of exploiting, just because of his vast knowledge and just like high level of focus. So, but it's for like this is like that spot, right? Like we've all been there so many times with this exact feelings. You're like, on the one hand, but on the other hand, right? And it's like, and then based on what your opponent has, either you look like a clown or you look like a genius.
Right. Which probably means that the situation's very, very close either way, and forever doesn't really matter, right?
And these are the spots where, like, if you do a review, it's perfect to do a solve. And like, maybe if you think someone is like, not check raising enough, then just lock that in the solver and get to the situation that really represents where you think you are in the specific node that you want to investigate. I think a mistake a lot of people do is they just like let it run to this point, and they get there with a range that's not representing, or like they give the imposition player like 3 different sizes with 3 bets or on C bets, and it's just like, no, realistically, he's just going to play one size. Like, just let it go to the point where you are in the hand, and then you get to make the best decision based on a solver that's clearly smarter than you and I are. So let it do its thing and give the accurate input, and your output is going to be really, really great.
The danger is getting the accurate input in the first place, right? That's a tricky sticking point for most everyone, really.
Which is, I think it's great, because so many people use solvers and they don't use them very well, which is great for me. I mean, they can sit there and try to play this solver style and not have a high level of accuracy or mixing the combos right. And I'm a big fan of simplifying, because I realize my own limitations, and if I simplify, I can like carry these strategies out with much higher accuracy.
For sure, which is what poker is, right?
And it's so comfortable. It's so nice and comfy. It's like, nice comfortable sweater and see that.
Yeah, you're not so tightly wound that like so intense and tightly wound that just anything completely disturbs you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's being able to think on your feet, being able to use deductive reasoning, I think, is the thing that matters most in poker. And like you said about Sauce, he's checking back, he's getting more information. He's really good at understanding what this information means, which is very beneficial and valuable to him, which is just a great way to go about poker. Like, it's just improving your deductive reasoning, your thought processes, asking yourself why, and paying attention. Like, especially in a live sitting, like there's no excuse for not paying attention, because people are exploitable all around us. With every hand that they play, you can uncover exploitabilities.
Well, with that said, I think it's really important to start even before you get to the live setting to understand what is it that you're looking for. Because if you sit down and you see someone make like a bunch of weird plays, and you can't really you don't know what that category of player means. I think it's great talking to recreational players and just hearing their thought process throughout a hand, because I'm not looking to exploit the guy that I'm talking to, but I find it very philosophically interesting to see how people approach it, what they think about it. I'm not a sociopath that goes in the break. You're like, what's up, guy? How did you think about this? But I find it very interesting from a philosophical standpoint to kind of just talk with people about, oh yeah, no, I thought it like this, and like so now I try to bluff, and I'm like, but you have like third pair, and they're and they're like, yeah, but I just felt right because A, B, and C reasoning or whatever.
It's really hard to go down, with a person.
And if you don't know that sitting down at the table, then you don't know what you're looking for. There's so many trees in the forest that all you see is a forest, basically. But if you know how to, which we can module now, like we have mass database research, we have ways of categorizing different player types, and we have ways of kind of like getting a better fundamental understanding for what it is these type of players in the pool does. So once you have that knowledge coming to the table and you pay attention, now you can start, okay, this guy is super volatile. Like, this guy is very passive. What does that mean? Like, how should I structure my defense against a 3-bet range from someone that's like has this very like top corner of the hands versus some guy that is like yay white, So that's, I think, where the table or where your work starts before getting there, and then you have to pay attention, because then like all that knowledge that you get from looking at people and seeing what they do, you can really utilize that.
It's clearly a mistake meeting people at a level that they're not at, and it's hard. Like, the curse of knowledge just makes it hard to think like people who think at a level that you're not at. Like, it's hard to level down to the thought processes of an amateur player, because most professionals haven't been amateurs in so long that it's like, it's hard to discern the why. Like, why is somebody doing this? Like, it looks so absurd sometimes, but like there's some thought process or rationale behind the decision. And when you understand that gives you insight into their brain, how they're operating. And then your adjustments make sense. Because the thing is, like, I learned this very early on, there are many ways to lose at poker. You can be very creative in being a losing player, and different losing players lose very differently. So just figuring out how they're losing or why they're losing is, kind of step one in the battle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just the intelligent, effective way of going about it. So like once you discern that someone is very tight, like, okay, how tight do I think he is? And then you model your off the table work in order to reflect that. And like, the responses you get from solver output is someone sometimes like baffling, like you feel like such a nit folding ace queen to 3-bet. But then you see that like, oh, this is actually solver like super approved, because like nothing good is going to happen,
I love that you say that too, because so many people misuse solvers that it's such a detriment. Like in a live setting, right? Like there are times I folded kings pre 4 or 5 times in my life. I've been shown aces every time. And most people are like, solver's never going to tell you to fold kings pre, ever.
Yeah.
However, if you input a range and node lock that your opponent only has aces, it will tell you to fold, right? Yes. Like, it's not going to tell you to get it in only against aces. I think it's that accuracy that people get scared of. They're scared of ranging somebody down to only, in that case, like one hand or a very narrow range of hands. When in actuality, I do think that people are very predictable. Looking at, like you said, mass database analysis, you can learn so much about what people are doing, and it's so consistent across the board. Like hanging out with Nick Howard's crew for 3 or 4 days, I get to see like all the mass database analysis results and the feedback, some things that I intuitively recognized at the table, but then some things that I didn't intuitively recognize that were very eye-opening, things to take advantage of. But it's like,
and I mean, like even the sickest guys that you play against, like even the like craziest guy that you could imagine, is probably not going to put in a 5-bet without the blade. Like, and if you have kings, then he doesn't have ace king and he doesn't have kings himself. So you're very likely to look into 2 aces.
and this goes back to what you said about the flow state, and when you're picking up all the information and you're just going with your intuition and your gut and you're making these killer decisions, right? You're just operating at a higher level than you normally do and trusting your ability to discern ranges at a very, very high level and just following through. Moving to the lightning round. When you think of joy in your career playing cards, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
Oh, wow. That's you know what? I think like Gus Hansen had this poker site way back when. And me and my friends from my football team, we always used to, like, we were sitting at home playing on our computer, and like one table was like free-roll tournament. I think like when I really started like beating the field in this like free-roll tournament, and like like it's like thousands and thousands of people, and I used to like started making the FT of this thing. Like, I mean, I was underage, I couldn't get the money out, but just like the pride of like somehow hammering out a strategy that was good enough to get through this massive field and like be like a winner like that. I think that's my one of my most proud moments in poker, actually, to be like, I beat my friends in my football team, and I also beat this like massive field of players, and like consistently did so. Like I take a lot of pride in that. That's an
awesome one. It's early in the beginning. There's so many feelings of joy, like that when you're beginning your career. I just realized too, and this is circling back to the hand that we broke down at the WSOP with 80 people left. I do want to tell people the conclusion. So the guy in position shoved and got snap called by ace queen, and then he busted. And that was that's the end of the hand. But just for those people that need that curiosity gap closed, like I know like the pros typically when we discuss hands, we don't even look at the results a lot of times. Like they're the least fascinating part of a hand history analysis because that is what it is, right?
Which is really cool. I think. Like, I mean, like it's cool. I didn't even. It's nice that you bring that up because it's really, I think, says a lot about. If you think about that a little bit more deeply, like it says a lot about how far I've gotten in my mindset to not even really care. Like I just care about the solution, and then the results will be what it will be. I think we came to a conclusion where the ranges are like pretty somewhat narrow, and you get into a spot where like it's pretty close. Like both plays have a lot of merits, and then we would have to like look into in nitty gritty with a solver to be like, how often should we shove here for it to be like really good, But yeah, I mean, like I always want to know the results myself, but it's good. It's a good thing that I'm not so attached to it that like I could just let it go. Like I probably wouldn't have ever thought about this until someone else told me a hand that was similar to this one. And I'm like, oh yeah, shit, what happened in the hand in the World Series main?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it and realized, the audience probably wants to know the result. Maybe we probably want to at least tell them what happened at the end there.
I'm happy too, and I'm yeah. It's queen. That's the killer. You don't want to shove into and get snapped and you're dead. Like anything but ace queen. At least you have a gutter to like scoop the pot. Against the set. You don't want to be like chop, please.
Ace, please chop, please chop.
Like in the World Series main, you have your one time and it usually works, right? But this time you have to do your one time for a 3-outer chop. Like that's not a fun thing. You want to like at least spike the gutter on the guy and be like, well, it's my one time,
This is my one time when it mattered.
Yeah.
For the record, and again, maybe this is just confirmation bias, but when I was thinking about the hand on the show, my natural inclination was to check back the turn. The jack I hated. Like the jack just looked like death to me.
Yeah, which I think is smart. I think it would be the standardized play to do so, and it would be the one that gives you the highest EV. But if I'm up against an opponent that I think is very tough, elite, and that thinks about the game in a similar way that I do, then I think shove gets a lot more closer than, because I'm not going to get the information I'm looking to get by the check back. So I'm not buying myself like any extra. I'm just trying to make the best play possible at the node that I'm in, because I'm not going to get more from a future street. So I think,
and you might, and you actually might, I think, like you might, and you might not, like you said, those times when you bet and you realize like, oh, I had, a look in my eye and I hope nobody noticed that. Right. I think this can definitely happen regardless of what level of play you are as a poker player. I've seen guys that are, they're playing super high stakes for a week and then all of a sudden they do something where it's like, I think of them as like a hardened professional that's not going to give something away. And I pick up on something and I'm like, holy shit, like that was, that's like very basic and obvious,
he's
right?
Human.
Yeah, he's a human being, right? And but of course, we're more aware. The easiest way to think about it is like from my perspective of there's plenty of spots on the river where I've bet. Or I remember one spot specifically where I bet. I can't remember the hand. I can't remember anything, but I just remember thinking in my head I was up against a really great player, Jesse Yaganuma, who's been on this show. And I remember thinking in my head, I hope he doesn't realize X, because if he realizes X, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And after like a minute of thought, he raised me on the river. And I don't know if he realized X or not, but it felt like he did in the moment.
Didn't you ask him when you had him on the show, like, did you realize X?
I don't remember the hand. I don't even remember the spot. I mean, like, and plus, like back then we weren't super close, so there's no chance he would have told me anything back then. I do remember an interesting hand I played with Jesse where, like, I had kings, I 3-bet, he cold forward at a cash game table, and the flop was like 3, 4, 5, 6 or something like that, and he c-bets, I call, the turn is like a tray. He bets again. I call. The river completes like a back door, but puts a straight on the board. So like deuce tray 4, 5, 6, and we started like 10K deep, and he like rips the river for like 5K. But like he checked his hole cards before he ripped because it put up backdoor spades. Like he checked his hole cards. He rips. And then I check my hole cards looking for the king of spades. And I call because if I have the king of spades, it makes it so much easier of a call. And like he had aces with the ace of spades, and I had kings with the king of spades. And like our friend Mike was like, that's hilarious. Like Jesse checked to see if he had the ace of spades. You checked to see if you had the king of spades, and then we just chopped it up. Anyway, I got us way off track again.
That's fine. That's fine. I would like we said, we do have a lot of time on our hands, so
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
When you think about pain in your poker career, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
I think there was like a lot of pain and suffering early on, just like living and dying with my results a lot. I was very attached to them, so I think that was painful. I think. I also think like a more like overhauling pains, like like dealing with kind of being your own manager and like managing your life and like all the pitfalls that comes from that. I think it's if I would have been so thankful to myself if like someone would have introduced meditation or mindfulness to me way earlier, like say even like going back to school, that this would be a practice that you start doing every day to like you learn the dynamics of like is controlling your brain. Because I've made so many decisions early in my career, you get a lot of money, you have a lot of freedom, you go to all these places, and making a lot of decisions that leads to pain in the long run. Like it seemed fun at the time, but then maybe not so much. I think those things are like the most painful, like like you making decisions that leads to hurting other people. Those are the things that I regret long term, and I see how it ended up there, and I don't think like I don't really blame myself because I was acting on the information that I had at the time. But looking back at it, I see the situation from maybe the other person's point of view, and it's like it doesn't shine the best light on me. So that to me is like actual pain. Like the rest of the stuff is like like I've broken multiple bones in my body before, and that's painful in a way, but it's not real pain. Like, that's going to be fine. But something that stays with another person, or those are the things that I think.
Yeah, sometimes I hear people talk about not having regret in life, and I just think that they're like sociopathic. Like, how can you not have regret? I have regret every single day over something. Like, it's such a natural thing to like look back at a past self and how you've acted in a spot where like you're almost effectively a different human being than you are now. And you just think, oh my God, why did I do that? Like, why you wish you could change it, right? Like
so two things on that. I think like the one part is, generally your mistakes that you made that you blow up in your mind, like say, you said X to person A and you feel like such a piece of shit for saying that. Like, I've had multiple times in my life where I said something and I'm like, how the fuck could I say that? I must come across as the worst human being possible to this person. So like, these are people I meet in poker, I met at a party or whatever, and then it might take like 3 to 6 months before I see them again. And I try to make a point of like holding myself to at least some standards. So like if I made a serious blunder, I go to the person, I apologize. Like, I didn't really mean what I said there, or I felt stressed, and like that's why I said this, or like just trying to.
Or you just say you're out of line. I think
exactly
instead of even rationalizing.
Exactly. So, but when I've done this, most of the people that I have apologized to have been like, they just look at me and they're like, what are you talking about? And then they're like, oh, yeah, I think I kind of forgot that you say, yeah, but it doesn't matter. And then they're like, but thank you so much for like actually coming and saying something about that. And it's just like, it's the same thing. Like, once you can admit that you made a mistake, it opens up space for other people to feel comfortable admitting their mistakes as well, which is a huge relief. So
I found the same. Apologizing for something that I feel horrible about, and then they basically minimize it. But now that I'm thinking about it, I do wonder if like human beings are naturally averse to being vulnerable, and so somebody even admitting that something really bothered them, I think for a lot of people is hard.
Yeah.
So, but either way, I think it's appreciated if you take the time to say, to just go up to them and make sure, right?
It shows that you care, and your actions do matter in that way. Like, if you never tell anyone you love them, then how do they actually know that you do? Like, you can show that they might feel that you are, but it's really important to verbalize that and to make sure that they know that, because that's what actually makes it real. Like, it's not real in your head, it's real if it's real to them, right?
Absolutely.
And then the second part you said about being like a sociopath, I think it's really okay. I have a third pain in poker, and it was when I started playing and I started kind of like figuring out the psychological, because every day you go and you sit at a table and you play against 7 or 8 guys, generally guys, because there's not that many women in poker, right? And you really get to see what people go for. Like, you get to see if they have it in them to pull a stone cold bluff on a river and you just look like it's Monday, even though it's Friday. But it really gives you, I think, like, it's like a microcosmos where you really get to make decisions, and you get to see how people, like, how they're inclined psychologically, and you can spot weakness in people easier. And you can kind of like, you're trying to spot leaks. So that spilled over to my personal life, like early on, where I got all this like intake of information and all this like, oh shit, like this is how people work. And I'm like 20 years old and I'm just like playing the game, and all of a sudden I get to, like a party, and I'm like, oh, this person is really insecure because I can spot that tell on them, and that to me led to a lot of suffering for a while. Like, me making, like, kind of like psychoanalyzing people in real life, and like kind of like their pain was then I took their pain upon me, and I really, by kind of acknowledging that and not letting them just be, I started to expose like that weakness in them. It was like I kind of like running some type of exploit, and now that I'm aware of their leak, they're more aware of their leak as well. So it's like just magnifies, even if that thing wasn't really that much of a deal to begin with.
Can you give an example of exploiting somebody's psychological leak?
Well, it's not that I'm like actively trying to belittle them or try to use this for something, but I just see, like someone said a sentence and they just hesitated like a couple of times when saying this. So I'm like, I see that maybe that was insecurity of theirs, or like speaking in front of people, and just by not just letting that be, by like actually like actively thinking about it, then that kind of like, people are very intuitive, right? Like even if you don't say anything, people can kind of like sense that you're sensing it just by your body language and the way you look at them. And if you don't give a fuck, they're like, okay, cool, like whatever, I made a mistake. But when they can kind of feel that you're tapping into that like insecurity of theirs, then that obviously magnifies. And then now you're in this like co-relationship where it just keeps being more and more angst on top of each other. And I had to really like check myself to realize like this was happening to me, because I ended up in a lot of situations where I was feeling anxious and I didn't really know why this is like happened. So instead I had to try to like, okay, tone it back. You don't understand as much as you think you're understanding, and even if you do, it's not your place to do so. So trying to play poker outside of like a poker table is probably not the best idea.
Do you think that this level of empathy that you have for other people is one of the things that has made you a great poker player?
Yeah, I think it's one of my stronger sides for sure. I think it's a good quality as long as utilized in a good way. And I think, I mean, like you can say, yeah, poker is a game of math, but it's really also a game of like applied math. And like every situation changes based on, like the intuitive feeling of the situation. And I think being an intuitive person, you can make those adjustments quicker and more steadfast and more solid and sound than I would be if I was a less person that was less in tune with the situation, basically.
And I think that empathy is a thing that's hard. It almost seems like we're born more empathetic or less empathetic, just human biology. This is pure speculation, but I would say that my theory that I just came up with on the spot that could be 100% wrong is that like less empathetic people in general are probably going to be more inclined to a strategy that's closer to GTO or trying to find answers. Because if you don't understand people and what people are thinking and how they're reacting, then what else do you have other than just pure math and pure hand charts and ranging and running the solvers? And I do think that like poker players specifically, especially if they're on the less social side of human beings, maybe do lack empathy and try to make up for it on the more technical side.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with the sentiment. I'm more on the nurture type of side of things, where it's like how you end up there, unless like like I worked for a long time with people with Asperger's syndrome, and they're born with it. Like they're born on the spectrum, and they're just like really good at certain things and really bad at other things, right? But I think most of these things are nurture. Some of your physicality, I think, is more nature, and then the psychological stuff is more nurture, which I think is like quite a relieving thing, because you can always change your nurture. It just takes a longer time to teach an old horse to sit when they're old, right?
Right, and I guess I do want to go back a little bit and say that, yeah, I agree with you in that it's more nurture as far as psychologically. Basically, what I'm saying is by the time you become old enough to be a poker player, that's when that view is pretty much set, whether you're empathetic or not, based on childhood upbringing, your experiences in life, just who you are at that stage. I think is what I was more trying to say.
Yeah. But I think that, like, even if you do have a predisposition towards something, it's like, if you have the will to change it, and you're not like on the spectrum, you can always change it. Like, poker is a game that kind of gears you more towards being, I think, like a little bit more isolated, and it's like really easy to use it as a escape from, having to have interactions with people, and like everything, like being social is not something that all people have, comes naturally to people. Like, it's like going to the gym if you want to work out a muscle, or it's like meditating. That's like the gym for your mind, right? So learning different techniques to be more social, and then also go out there and like try out things. Like, I think the one thing that helped me the most was going backpacking and traveling by myself. I just constantly had to put myself in uncomfortable situations. And I did that for so many times. So, getting to a new hostel, not knowing anyone there, having to feel awkward and like walking up to people and hoping that they want to hang out with me, that type of stuff. It's like, you realize after a while that like most of your interactions are so positive, but in your mind, you make up this whole like, oh, people are going to hate me, or like, I'm not that interesting, or yada, yada, instead of just coming into a situation and like, generally people are super nice. And if they're not, then that's fine. You don't want to hang out with them anyways, right? So it's like, it's a win-win type of situation. It's just, if you never try it, it's like the monster under your bed, right? Like, it's really scary because it's dark there. But once you've been there a few times and you're comfortable with that it's dark underneath, like, there's nothing there, right?
Yeah, you just have to realize these agreements that you have made about yourself in life, that I don't like big crowds. I don't like X. I'm not the type of person that does X, right?
Yeah.
Because these agreements were probably made at a very young age and could very well not be the truth of the matter. And until you push yourself towards uncomfortability, that's only when you're going to realize that, oh, well, yeah, maybe this wasn't true and I did believe it about myself.
Yeah. I mean, like, at least do, like, for the listeners out there, at least do yourself a favor to put yourself in these uncomfortable situations, say somewhere between 3 and 10 times, depending on like how bad you feel, or like if you if you really didn't enjoy this thing, like really didn't, then maybe do it just 3 times to see if it's like, okay, maybe this wasn't for you. But generally do yourself a favor and like try things that are just uncomfortable more than a few times, and you might be very surprised to see what is at the other side. Like, it might be a space that you never thought you would enjoy. You might actually like really enjoy these interactions with these people. You might actually really get something from them. Or you might even learn something about yourself. It's a slippery slope, but it's a good slippery slope.
It's asymmetrical. It's an asymmetrical experiment where the downside typically is very small with a massive, huge upside. And
exactly.
Where you have to go through is just your own fear and your own doubt and your own insecurity. That's the barrier to entry.
Yes. One added thing. YouTube, the hero's journey. I think it's a excellent analogy, just in terms of just as a life philosophy, basically. So the hero's journey on YouTube. There's multiple videos. They're all talking about the same subject.
Joseph Campbell, right? I'm pretty sure the hero's journey is a book by Joseph Campbell.
Maybe it is. I've only seen like the shortened down YouTube versions of it.
I know he wrote it, The Hero of a Thousand Faces.
Yeah.
But anyway, just check it out. Check out the short YouTube video, not the book, because
I'll send you a good one and you can post it in the description maybe. It's
okay, perfect.
It's a really, really nice way of thinking about your life and taking charge of it, and understanding that everyone goes through the same type of cycles that you do. Is like it's not exclusive to you. We all go through the same ups and downs, and that it has to happen that way, basically. Like every great movie is based on those same principles and concepts. You're going to see a lot of similarities in that.
Right. Humans are built for story, And those are the best stories, because we're living a story, right? Like we are the protagonists, I think, in our own stories.
Yeah.
If you could erect a billboard every poker player's got to drive past on their way to the casino, what would it say?
More rake is better. That's really tough. There's so many things you want to say, right? I think one thing that I really like, that really resonated with me, Rick Salmon, he's usually he wears this hat and it says "Be here now," and I think that's something that I utilize a lot in my life. Like when I'm not very present, I sit at a table and I just like repeat this in my head, like "Be here now," and just arriving at like the now. It's a very good mantra to reconnect with like your experience in the now. So I saw this on like a hat when he was playing some high stake game, and I'm like, that's bloody genius. Like, that's what I would put. That's what I put.
Be here now. That's a great one.
Now. Yeah,
that's a great one. If you could give all poker players one book to read, what would it be?
Oof, all poker players. I mean, like I have a lot of books that I would recommend for myself, but all poker players, like the broad audience, I think. Drive.
Doesn't have to be poker.
No, I think
by the way.
No, I think a book called Drive by, his name is Daniel Pink, I think, and it's called like Drive: The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. It's a pretty old book. He wrote another book after that I didn't enjoy as much, but Drive I thought was really, really good. It really taps into like, why do we do things, and how much money do you need to, like, how much of a motivator is money and why is it a motivator? I think he wrote another book called To Sell is Human, and I didn't enjoy that as much because I'm not a seller. So. but I'm really interested in motivation and drive. So
that kind of circles back to the, one of the original questions that I asked you, like why do poker players have a default strategy, right? Like why do we do what we do? Just constantly asking what drives us. Why do we do this thing that seems so automatic, and then kind of break it apart. And there's always insightful, awesome lessons to learn when you do that.
Yeah, I have that book somewhere at home, and it's like, I've read it a bunch of times. It's really worn. It has like this cool cover that kind of looks like a Tetris type thing. And I'm like, like when I get that nice bookshelf in my house, like the custom built like white bookshelf is just going to be there, like right in the middle. So yeah, it's a really, really great book. And I think it really holds over time as well.
Those are the best ones.
Solid research and solid takeaways.
Yeah. Social proof of it being worn down and you rereading it over and over makes it automatically more valuable to everybody listening.
And if you want to read something more like that's not like as factual, I think all of Herman Hesse's books are really great. They're very short novels that really like all has a lot of ancient type of wisdom in them, and like really short condensed reads that will really like get the reader something out of it. So he has, what is it, Siddhartha, Steppenwolf, what else? Yes, Damien is really good. So like those are more literary books that I feel people could really get something out of. I learned a lot from those.
Awesome, man. What's a project you're working on right now that's near and dear to your heart?
I guess myself. I went through a breakup with my ex-girlfriend. I've known her for close to 9 years, and we lived together for 4 years. So that's obviously like a big change, separating from someone and finding just. I've always been my own person. I've never been that person that like gets into a relationship and that's just me. But it's obviously still a major change. So I think my project for now has been just me, and then I have some like I have my day-to-day running business. I have a lot of people that I work with in poker, and we have a bunch of different projects that we are constantly involved in. But my biggest project right now has been me, and I think it's going okay. It's going quite well.
This is always the safe answer, because I think at the root of humans, this is always the project, right? At the end of the day, we're always a work in project. We're always working on ourselves.
True. So sometimes there's more moving parts, so it takes more effort, right?
Right.
And other times you're just in flow and you don't really just show up. You wake up every day and you're already there and present. Other days disruptions bring big awareness. Yeah.
Leaving a serious relationship or just some sort of life disruption.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. So final question. Where can the Chasing Poker Greatness audience find you on the World Wide Web?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter. So it's Anton, Anton, and then _WIGG. I think that's the only platform that I have available for everyone. If you want to ask any questions, I pride myself on being an honest person. So if you have any questions, I'll give you an honest answer if you hit me up there.
Awesome, man. It's been great having you on this social isolation quarantine episode of Chasing Poker Greatness.
Likewise.
I have a feeling my interviews might start going longer while everybody is socially isolated in quarantine.
Yeah, why not, right? I'm very happy to be here. I've listened to your pod a bunch, and I think you're a great interviewer. You have very relevant questions, and I see that you're I wouldn't go on any podcast, but I see that you're trying to bring something more than just the poker aspect, which I really appreciate. I think it could be more of that in poker in general. Content that doesn't just have to be poker. It's also lifestyle and poker. If you're a professional poker player, it is your lifestyle. So I think it's important to balance.
You spend a lot more times away from the table than you do on the table, and what I'm finding is, you hit the nail on the head with something that you said earlier, that a lot of the struggles that I've been through, a lot of my pain and my suffering could have been prevented had I known that other people were going through the same exact pain and suffering without ever verbalizing it or talking about it. And this is something that I find on this show, that it's very common, all the things that poker players go through, all these different emotions and feelings throughout their poker career and their poker journey. So for the audience listening, I really appreciate what you said. And for the audience listening, this is your opportunity to hear from these people who have experienced something that maybe you will experience or that you're going through. And hopefully you can take it to heart and really meditate on the wisdom that my guests provide, because it will ease your suffering on this poker journey and help out over your career.
Yeah, 100%.
Anton, let's do this again. Let's do this round 2.
Sounds
hopefully not a worldwide pandemic type situation, but maybe in a year or 2.
Hey man, you know what? All the smart people all the really smart people I've met in my life, they all echoed one thing, and they've all said this one thing: it is what it is. And I find that to be so comforting, and so such a easy, simple truth that's so close. Okay, the situation is a bit more dire than usual, but it is what it is. And once you accept that, then that's the first step in moving forward and taking charge of the next moment that you have. So,
super helpful in poker sense too. You make a mistake, you have a low degree of certainty, you punt. It is what it is, right?
And that was bad.
Yeah, that was bad. It is what it is, and now life goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, my man.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Chasing Poker Greatness. If you have yet to subscribe to the show, please take a second to do so on Apple Podcasts or wherever your favorite place to listen to podcasts may be. For more content from me, Coach Brad, please visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/enhanceyouredge, and I'll see you next time.